All right. That wasn't bad for a panel without a moderator as a recently former journalist. I'll give them credit for that. Though I would also argue Tim was the de facto moderator there. So thank you so much for that. Definitely learned a lot. For our next conversation, we're going to be having on stage for the Freedom of Self-Custody panel, Ian Rogers, the CXO of Ledger, and moderator Raphael Bloch, co-founder and editor-in-chief of The Big Whale. They're going to be talking about why custodying your own crypto isn't just for libertarians, and why if you haven't taken the opportunity to finally learn how to go ahead and do that, maybe you should do that right now. Please welcome them to the stage with a big round of applause. Thank you so much, Ian and Raphael.
Here, we sit under our pictures.
Yep. Thank you.
What's up, everybody? Hello there. The last thing between you guys and beer.
Yep. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So this is the last panel of the day, but I think maybe the best of the day.
Oh, you're very kind.
So yeah, I'm Raphael Bloch, one of the co-founders of The Big Whale, the leading European crypto media. I'm very glad to be with you, Jan, on stage to talk about short but very challenging subjects. So the freedom of self-custody. I would like to start with a simple question, because you're the CXO of Ledger. You often say that if not self-custody, why crypto? Can you just unpack this idea for us?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think for everybody in crypto, it's an important question. Like, so if not self-custody, then why crypto? Right? I mean, what is it that's unique about this invention? I started working on the internet in the early 90s, and it's actually a pretty simple innovation. Two computers can talk to each other, and you can transfer information between two computers, and that's really kind of it. And it's brought like an incredible economy of the internet. I think similarly, what do we have with crypto? We have permissionless money. That is the innovation. We've had databases that are ledgers of balances as long as we've had computers, but solving that in a trustless way is actually the innovation. So if there's something that gives users power, and the internet gave users power through decentralization and not having all of the information in the hands of a few, and that made a revolution of information. Well, there's a revolution of value that comes from having permissionless money, and that's the vision. That's the industry, the business that we're all in fundamentally, and that's also why you can change an industry where sending $100,000 via wire will cost you $40, but you can send $100,000 with crypto rails for instantly for a fraction of a penny, because there is actually a decentralization that also leads to competition.
And I'm sure that you saw that Paul Atkins, so SEC chairman, just said yesterday that self-custody is US human right. Do you think that it's only fits with the US-based value, or it's a worldwide movement?
I hope not. I mean, so we at Ledger go to Washington, D.C. regularly and meet with lawmakers. And I haven't yet met an American lawmaker who doesn't believe that American citizens should be able to hold their digital private property in their digital safe the same way that they can hold their physical private property in their personal safe. So I hope that is not a U.S. only value. I think that surveillance is not freedom, and that's not U.S. only. I think George Orwell did quite a good job of demonstrating that once upon a time. So I really hope. I don't think it's controversial to say that individuals should be able to hold their personal private property in their hands, so to speak, whether that's digital private property or physical private property. And that's really what we're talking about, is digital private property.
And do you understand that it's still something quite hard to understand for the vast majority of people, even if, in the crypto space, there are many people that are holding crypto, but not in self-custody. They are using exchanges. They will use banks and other big corporates. So how can you explain that even if it's, really important right to self-custody, people are willing just to, okay, we don't want to manage everything, especially the private keys?
I think what's important is the consumer choice, right? The technology allows for the choice of self-custody, and that's not to say that absolutely everyone, must self-custody, but the good itself is different if you don't have that choice. I have, I can have money in the bank account and I can walk to the ATM and I can then have self-custody. In my wallet, I have a mixture of custody and self-custody. I have, a credit card with a high limit and a debit card with a low limit and a metro ticket, which is self-custody of something that's kind of legal tender, and some cash and a driver's license, which is issued by a centralized authority, yet in my possession and proves I'm over the age of 21, et cetera. So I think, that we'll always have a heterogeneous kind of future. The question is, what rights do we have as users? And then, it's up to me as the individual to exercise those rights in the way that I want to. But it's fundamentally a different good if it is, if it is a CBDC where I have, no right to either self-custody or lack of surveillance or portability or permissionless transfer. You end up with a basket of rights when you have a good which is fundamentally capable of self-custody. And the other things I would argue are user experience, right? The ETF, you have Bitcoin, which is permissionless money, and then you have an ETF, but an ETF is really just, a UI on top of what is fundamentally permissionless money.
Yeah, but it's working. As you saw 2 days ago, we wrote about the fact that the Bitcoin ETF from BlackRock, overpassed 70 billions in AUM. It's huge. So
yeah, and part of the reason the Bitcoin has value is because of its permissionlessness. It wouldn't have the same value if that were digital gold that was thought up by the United States government.
And would you say that it's more a matter of principle, to self-custody your own asset, or it's, more, easier, efficient in an economical way?
I think it's really up to the user and the user's circumstance, and what are they holding the funds for, and what are they doing it with. It really depends on the individual circumstance, whether they're speculating on an asset and they want to see it in their portfolio next to their Apple and their Tesla stock. That's a use case. I also, met with a woman in New York who said, I just wanted to say thank you because my husband and I were able to get all of our personal wealth out of Russia on a ledger, right? So different people have different use cases, and I think it's important that the asset allows for that.
And self-custody, it's only for, retail, or is it something also for
absolutely not. I think self-custody is more important for enterprise. Right now, if you are an enterprise, then you have the option of a product like Ledger Enterprise, where you can do self-custody at the enterprise level. If you don't need to, why, as an institution, are you taking that counterparty risk? Why, after SVB, if you don't need that counterparty risk and you have access to yield and everything else, why would you be taking that risk? It makes no sense. So Ledger Enterprise is one of our fastest growing products because it's effectively the only way to truly do self-custody at the enterprise level. You don't want to do what Bybit was doing and use free software to protect billions in value, because you might give those billions to the North Korean government. But you have the option as an enterprise of having true self-custody, which is truly secure. It's not security theater, it's actually security.
And how do you find the right balance between freedom and security? Security is mandatory when you talk about self-custody, but at the same time, because it's freedom, how do you find the right balance between those two fundamental rights?
I think it really depends on the individual and what they are, what their use case is and what they are prepared to do. For us, consumer choice is paramount. So, I think that the most important thing is that whomever you are, you're thinking very hard about where your value is and how it is protected. I think what's incredible to me is that you have 3 trillion plus in the crypto market cap. Personally, I can't name 5 places that I would recommend to protect your funds. And I think that's super interesting, kind of bananas. You think about all of the options that people have. Is it a custodian? What do you know about them? What do you know about their security? What do you know about the counterparty risk? How much can you trust them? I think that there are relatively few custodians that we all would agree that we trust. If you are using a software-only solution to protect your crypto, that is ridiculous, frankly. I mean, it's not smart. And if you are targeted, you will get wrecked, period. And then there are relatively few, Ledger being the premier one, good, no compromise, and by that I mean, actually, the 3 things you need to be secure in hardware are a private key that is generated and stored, in a secure element, cryptographic operations happening in the secure element, and a secure screen where you can eyeball the transactions on a screen that is directly connected to the secure element. And if those are your standards of security, there isn't another product apart from Ledger that checks all 3 of those boxes. None of the other hardware wallets out there check all 3 of those boxes. And that's what I mean when you say if you're really freedom from compromise, then that's where you end up. So you end up somewhere either trusting a custodian or with Ledger. I think those are kind of your only 2 options. And every individual needs to evaluate exactly what they're trusting for what, when, and what the risks are at each one of those cases, including their own operational security in the case of self-custody, and how do you do recovery in the case that you lose your device or forget your PIN.
Okay. So according to you, there are different ways to be in self-custody, right? Different ways. Different setups.
Yeah, I think with Ledger, there's really 3 things that you're looking for when you're looking for a solution to store your funds. The first one is security, because you have a digital something that you could lose. So how are you protecting it? So security is first of all, and I just covered that. The second is ease of use. And that's like I said, the ETF is a great user interface. But what can you do with it? What freedom does it allow you? And so, with Ledger, we're always trying to make the user experience better without ever compromising on security or self-custody along the way. Every cycle, you have very intelligent, very rational people giving you what sound like decent explanations for why they should compromise on security and self-custody. It usually involves onboarding the masses, and then people get wrecked in the end. It's like clockwork. It just keeps happening. What we do for 10 years is try to make that user experience better without compromising on security and self-custody, and that does take longer. But that we get there. Now the third is redundancy. If I lose my wallet, if I forget my seed phrase, if I put my device in the washing machine, like what are my backup solutions? And we try to offer the widest range from a recovery sheet to Steal to an opt-in subscription service that does backup based on your identification.
And years ago you started with nanos and other small product for retail. Now you have a wider range of services. What's the vision? So after 10 years, what's the vision for the next I would say 2, 3, maybe 5 years? Where you want to be with Ledger in 2030?
Well, the vision is to allow people to do absolutely everything they want to do with their digital assets without needing to compromise on either security or self-custody. So you need first of all devices that are very easy to use. So that's moving from what Tony Fadell, the inventor of the iPod, called business to geek. When he looked at our nanos, he said, okay, you guys are business to geek. You need to achieve business to consumer. And so I think with Ledger Stacks and Ledger Flex, with a secure touchscreen, we're much closer to business to consumer. And then I think the next piece of that is really ease of use. Like, what can I do with it? Can I touch everything I would like to do with digital ownership, along the way. And then I think the third piece of that is enterprise. As this becomes, you're moving freely between, as a consumer, whether it's custody or self-custody, the security of whomever has the custody matters a lot. So in all cases, security matters in both security and self-custody. So really, I think that we've got a 3-point-something trillion market cap today with 10 trillion, quite easy to see. And as you go there and beyond, having truly best-in-class security solutions that allow you to do everything that the digital asset world has to offer has a ton of value, and that's what we're in the business of for both consumers and enterprise.
And I mean, the crypto market is, booming for at least the last 6-12 months. But we saw a shift in the market. It's more a B2B, a corporate market. Has it changed something in your business, in the way that you see the market at Ledger?
We're following the same thing as everyone else, right? So, certainly in 2021 cycle, you had DeFi, NFTs, self-custody is really a must, and getting people into secure self-custody is a must. Certainly institutional adoption is what people are talking about. Regulatory movement in the US is what everyone is talking about. But what's interesting is Ledger has been doing enterprise for 6+ years now. And if you look at some of the regulation, for example, the way the regulation in Texas for the Treasury, or whether the lawmaking for the Treasury in Texas, really it requires state self-custody. There's not another product to do that with apart from Ledger Enterprise. So bringing Ledger's unique approach to security and self-custody, both for consumers and institutions, it's not something new for us. Like I said, we've been doing it for 6 years, but that we're certainly making sure that what we're doing for enterprise tracks with what's going on in the market right now.
And so you're working with more, finance institutions, corporates in payments, stuff like this, or is it broader? Do you think that crypto is just about finance, or is it something bigger with?
For us, it's much bigger. That's why we talk about digital private property very broadly. And again, I use my analogy at the beginning. To us, digital assets is the internet. It's that big. And when you ask, well, what industries is this going to change? The answer is all, right? Having digital private property changes absolutely everything. It's, I think, as Chris Dixon says, I think we're actually pretty under-indexed still on people who are attacking the opportunities in this particular realm. I would pivot out of AI and into crypto if I were on that side of the aisle, because I think that for every problem over there's 50 people trying to solve it, and there are a lot of problems in crypto that are still largely unsolved. So I think that for us on the retail side, it's absolutely everything from, of course, it's crypto, and that's always been the primary application of Ledger. But whether that is collectibles or identity or payments, those are all things that are within our wheelhouse. And then on the Ledger Enterprise side, enterprise is focused on banks, governments, institutions, anybody who is more than an individual who needs not only security but also governance, right? That's really the key difference you need if you are an institution. Is not only do you need the security and the self-custody, but you need a governance layer, so that the backup is not with your most trustworthy IT person, right? But you actually have governance that governs the treasury across the company.
Maybe two last questions. The competition is, bigger for Ledger. You have competitors across the world. Now you have also banks. Many projects are working on also custody. What is the biggest edge for Ledger in this market?
I think the biggest edge is secure self-custody, right? And in a way that actually allows you to do everything you would like to do with your assets, right? Because when you hold them yourself, there's so much more that you can do. I'm not at the whim of my provider to tell me what it is I can do with my assets. I can do anything that my assets are capable of. And that's where the real power is. It's sort of like saying, what's the advantage of the internet over America Online? if the only thing you want to do is sit in an AOL chat room and browse the web in a shitty browser, well, AOL was great. But it didn't allow you to do everything that the web had to offer. And I think the world of digital assets is exactly the same. If you want to play inside a walled garden, having your bank tell you what you can do with your possessions, well, that will be an option. It's like AOL or CompuServe. But if you really want to take advantage of the world of digital assets, then you're going to need need the assets themselves, and to do that, you're going to need security, because if self-custody, then security. Really, I think is the starting point there.
And last question:
Yep.
what's missing? To self-custody in terms of adoption, just to convince. Retail and corporates. You're the CXO of Ledger. It's the UX. What is it?
It's a great question, and yeah, I really think that it is like the early days of the web. Again, I'm old, so I remember when you didn't say like download my app or go to my website. You said there's this thing called the internet, and if you get a computer and a modem and a web browser and an ISP, then you can download this page really slowly until your roommate picks up the phone. And we got way past that, right? And it's similar here. There's kind of a huge promise with the ability to move any amount of money under a second for under a penny, right? And now the applications have to build around that, and we all need to have the usability of that, in our pocket. So that is, why Pascal gave me the title Chief Experience Officer, because when you buy an iPhone, you're not just buying, a piece of hardware. You're buying into an ecosystem and kind of an expectation around consumer experience. And that, I think, is where we need to get to with crypto broadly. And I really do think that there are many ways that we're there. I mean, if you want to do, send, receive, earn yield, across pretty much anything, you can already do it. You can walk into Best Buy for $79. You can buy a ledger. You can buy your first crypto. You can swap your first crypto. You can stake your first crypto and earn yield. All of that is super easy and accessible. And now I think it's a matter of, and you're right about competition, but if you notice in what you said, none of that competition is other self-custody wallets. We don't have competition in that realm. Our competition is Coinbase, Revolut.
Yeah, but maybe this is also a problem. To be the only one.
I think it actually is just a very different value proposition, right? I really do think that everyone else, when I think about the great companies of Coinbase, Revolut, Robinhood, et cetera, but that is America Online and CompuServe, and certainly some meaningful percentage of people will choose the internet.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for.
Pleasure. Thank you guys for staying. Appreciate it.